Hi, I'm Larry Levin, and welcome to another edition of Cop Talk. Here with me, our esteemed and wonderful Editor-in-Chief Emeritus, Bob Cohn.
Thank you, Larry. Glad to be here.
And I just want to remind everybody that there's only 10 weeks left to subscribe to the Jewish Light before your current subscription runs out. So call today, 743-3660, or visit our website, www.stlJewishLight.com. Okay, now to the meaty stuff.
Yes.
So Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas wrote an opinion piece in the New York Times last Monday that caught fire, and it was about pushing for a unilateral declaration of a Palestinian state. You've been somewhat supportive of this idea, as you think it'll start to force the Palestinians to act with the responsibility of a sovereign nation. But the rhetoric in that op-ed was utterly hateful and dismissive of Israel, and we wrote about that in our editorial.
Yes.
Are you still supportive?
I am still supportive of the idea of a Palestinian state, as is Bibi Netanyahu and Tzipi Livni and Ehud Barak.
What about this unilateral
declaration? The unilateral declaration, I'm opposed to using that route as opposed to the peace process. However, once a state of Palestine is established in the United Nations, the negotiations could then be between the Jewish state of Israel and the Arab state of Palestine, and it would be more co-equal than between Israel and a non-state player.
But given what Abbas was saying in that op-ed, which was totally refusing to recognize Israel, it had language in it that was more akin to what Hamas says than what the Palestinian Authority
and the Hamas-Fatah pact has been compared to the Hitler-Stalin pact. It's utterly cynical. And in the aftermath of that, when President Obama, in the presence of King Abdullah II, said that it's more urgent than ever that there be an Arab-Israeli peace treaty, it'll be interesting to see how all these dueling speeches this week play out.
Do you expect much from the Netanyahu visit?
Well, there is going to be an opportunity, and hopefully more than a photo op, for Bibi Netanyahu and Barack Obama to have a meeting. They're two of the most eloquent spokespeople for any government in the past at least 30 or 40 years. And so hopefully they can come up with some more than rhetorical effort to move things forward.
What about the prospect in the near future that Obama will actually visit Israel and set ground there and speak before Knesset? Do you think that's likely?
I think it is highly likely that before the 2012 election that such a visit will take place.
Well, speaking of 2012, we really don't have to worry about much of that or even about anything that takes place after this recording, because according to Harold Camping, the head of the Family Radio Broadcasting Network, Judgment Day is May 21st, with the resultant end of the world to follow. So this is one of another in an endless series of predictions based on extrapolation of biblical numerology. And since we're talking today, everyone to date has been wrong. Why do you think folks are so insistent on such stuff?
There's a wonderful book called When Prophecy Fails. Like on June 6, 1866, the world was supposed to come to an end. People sold their belongings. They gathered on mountaintops. Nothing happened. So a hardcore will stick with such beliefs while others will fall away. And it's been a repeated pattern. There's this kind of need for an apocalyptic vision, the end of days. We have it in our traditional Judaism as well.
Right.
So I think there is just kind of a persistent need. So I have plans for May the 22nd.
Excellent.
And I predict that this fellow will say, well, we were off by a few years.
So here's the next new day.
Exactly.
To a similar end, we've heard from similar quacks in the past about how certain social and physical phenomena, Hurricane Katrina, the AIDS epidemic, the list goes on, represent a punishment from God for our collective aberrant behavior. Yet during the storms that sadly and recently savaged the heart of the Bible Belt, we didn't hear any such outcries. Hypocrisy?
Total hypocrisy, and I'm glad you juxtaposed those two, because when 9/11 happened, you had Pat Robertson and Jerry Falwell using exactly the kind of blaming it on sexual misconduct, etc. There's absolutely no correlation between the two.
Anything else you got this week?
Well, we have the Arab Spring, which is possibly becoming kind of wintry with the attempt in Syria to send people across the border with Israel, regarded as a diversionary tactic to take away the concern about his own regime. The United States has placed sanctions on Mr. Bashar Assad and several members of his entourage to end the crackdown, quote unquote, which has killed a minimum of 850 people. So that's something that deserves more than close monitoring.
And we should contrast what's going on in different countries, and you've been very clear on that throughout. For instance, in Tunisia, we don't see anywhere near the same response as we see, say, in Syria.
Correct. There's no one-size-fits-all for the so-called Arab Spring.
Exactly right. Well, that's another week of conversation about topical issues. This is Larry Levin from the Jewish Light, and with Bob Cohn. Thank you much, and thank you to our producer of these wonderful videos, Aggie Gallagher. Take care, and we'll see you next time.